Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something. How many of you have ever found yourself giving and giving only to realize that when you need something, there's no one around? You're always there for others, lifting them up, being the person they can rely on. But when the tables turned, when you're the one struggling, suddenly the room is empty. Sound familiar? See, being a kind and giving person is an incredible gift, but it can also feel like a curse. You go out of your way to help people, to be there, to support, to love unconditionally. And at first it feels good, right? It feels fulfilling. You believe that kindness will come back to you, that people will appreciate your heart, your generosity. But then reality kicks in. The more you give, the more people expect. And before you know it, you're running on empty, drained, exhausted, yet still trying to pour from an empty cup. Here's the harsh truth. When you give too much, too freely, without limits, people start taking it for granted. Not because they're bad people, but because that's just how human nature works. We become accustomed to the things we don't have to work for. The more available you are, the more they assume you'll always be there. And when you're always there, they stop valuing you. Think about it. If you had a bank account that always refilled itself, would you think twice before spending the money? Of course not. But the moment you realize that money is limited, you start respecting its value. It's the same with kindness. If you don't set limits, if you don't protect your energy, people won't think twice before withdrawing from you until one day you're left emotionally bankrupt. And what happens when you reach that point? You start feeling isolated, not because you don't have people around, but because you start realizing how one-sided your relationships have been. You feel unseen, unheard, unappreciated. And here's the kicker. You start questioning yourself. Am I not good enough? Am I doing something wrong? No, my friend, it's not that you're not good enough. It's that you've been giving to everyone except the one person who needs it the most, you. See, real connection isn't about constantly giving. It's about balance. It's about mutual respect, about pouring into others without draining yourself. The problem isn't kindness. The problem is giving without boundaries. Because if you don't teach people how to value you, they won't. So here's what I want you to remember. It's okay to be kind. It's okay to give. But it's also okay to say no. It's okay to step back. It's okay to choose yourself. Because when you stop overgiving, when you start setting boundaries, something incredible happens. You don't lose people who truly care about you. You lose the ones who were only there for what they could take. And let me tell you, that is not a loss. That is a win. You know what's crazy? The nicest people in the world, the ones who show up, who care, who go the extra mile, are often the ones who feel the most unappreciated. You give your time, your energy, your heart, and yet somehow it feels like no one truly sees you. Not really. People just assume you'll always be there, like it's a given, like it's your job to be the dependable one. And after a while, that realization stings. At first, it doesn't even bother you. You tell yourself, it's okay, I don't do it for recognition, I do it because I care. And that's true. But let's be real. When was the last time someone truly appreciated you? Not just a passing thank you, but real, deep, meaningful appreciation. Because what happens over time is this. When you're always the one giving, people stop noticing. When you're always reliable, people stop valuing what you do. They expect it. They take it as a given. And here's where it gets dangerous. You start blending into the background, not because you're not important, but because your kindness has become invisible. People get so used to you showing up that they don't even consider what life would be like if you didn't. And then one day, you start asking yourself, if I stopped being there for everyone, would they even notice? And that thought alone, that's enough to break a person. You see, when people expect kindness, they stop respecting it. It's like oxygen. Nobody notices it until it's gone. But here's what you need to understand. This isn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong by being kind, by being there. But if you're constantly pouring into people who don't pour back into you, you will start feeling empty. You will start feeling alone, even in a room full of people. And here's what's even more frustrating. People will always notice when you finally decide to stop. The moment you pull back, set a boundary, or say, I can't do this anymore, suddenly you're the bad guy. Suddenly people who never acknowledged your effort before asking, what happened? Why are you acting different? And it's because they only realize what you were doing when they no longer have access to it. But the truth is, you shouldn't have to disappear for people to appreciate you. You shouldn't have to reach a breaking point before someone finally says, hey, I see you, I appreciate you. That's why you have to decide right now that you will not keep giving to people who can't even bother to notice. Not out of resentment, not out of bitterness, but because you deserve better. Because your kindness should be valued, not expected. Because if they can't see your worth while you're there, they don't deserve to have you there at all. You ever notice how the people who care the most, who give the most, who love the most, are also the ones who struggle the most to say no? It's like there's this voice in the back of their mind saying, if you say no, they'll be disappointed. If you say no, they'll think you don't care. If you say no, they might leave. So what do? They say yes, again and again. Even when they're exhausted, even when it hurts, even when a part of them is screaming, I can't keep doing this. And here's the problem. When you never say no, people stop asking. They just assume you'll be there. They assume you'll handle it. They assume you don't have limits. And before you know it, you've trained the people around you to believe that your needs don't matter, not because they're bad people, not because they're trying to take advantage of you, but because you've never shown them otherwise. See, boundaries aren't just about keeping the wrong people out. They're about teaching the right people how to love and respect you. Because if you don't set those boundaries, you will attract the wrong ones. You will attract people who only see what you can do for them, not who you actually are. And the people who truly care, the ones who actually love you, they won't leave just because you say no. They won't disappear just because you choose yourself for once. But here's where it gets tricky. When you've spent your whole life being the one who never says no, the moment you finally do, people don't take it well. They get frustrated. They push back. They say, what's wrong with you? Because they're not used to it. They've built an entire relationship with you based on the idea that you will always be available, always be accommodating, always put them first. And when that changes, it forces them to reevaluate, to actually consider your feelings, your time, your energy. Some people will adjust, some won't. But the ones who get angry, the ones who guilt trip you, the ones who act like you owe them something just because you've always given, those are the ones who were never really there for you to begin with. So the real question is, what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of losing people, or are you afraid of realizing who was only there because you never had boundaries in the first place? Because the truth is, when you start valuing yourself, you don't lose real relationships. You lose the ones that were never real to begin with. People love to say kindness is a strength, and it is, but let's be honest. How often do nice people actually get treated like they're strong? More often than not, they get overlooked, dismissed, or taken advantage of. Because somewhere along the way, the world decided that being kind means being weak, that being understanding means being a pushover, that being good means being naive. And if you've ever been in that position, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You show up with a good heart, thinking people will see it for what it is, but instead they see an opportunity. They see someone who won't fight back, someone who won't demand more, someone who will keep forgiving even when they shouldn't. And before you know it, you're sitting there wondering, why do people treat me this way? Why don't they respect me? Why does it feel like no matter how much I do, I'm never truly seen? Because the world has a habit of mistaking kindness for weakness until you prove them wrong, until you show them that kindness is a choice, not a lack of strength. That just because you're patient doesn't mean you'll tolerate disrespect. That just because you understand people's struggles doesn't mean you'll let them walk all over you. That just because you lead with love doesn't mean you won't stand your ground. The problem is nice people don't like conflict. They don't like confrontation. They don't want to rock the boat. So they stay quiet. They let things slide. They say, it's not a big deal. I'll let it go. But every time they do that, they teach the people around them that it's okay to treat them that way. And little by little, that kindness, the thing that's supposed to be their greatest strength, becomes the very thing that isolates them. Because let's be real, people respect what they can't control. And if they think they can walk all over you without consequences, they will. Not because they're all bad people, but because that's how human nature works. People test limits. They push boundaries. And if you never push back, they assume you never will. But here's what they don't realize. Kindness isn't a weakness, it's a power. The strongest people in the world aren't the loudest, the toughest, or the most ruthless. They're the ones who can stay kind in a world that tries to harden them. The ones who can be generous without being taken for granted. The ones who know when to give and when to walk away. Because being kind doesn't mean letting people take advantage of you. It means knowing your worth and refusing to accept anything less. You ever feel like you're speaking a different language than everyone else? Like the things that matter to you, the depth, the loyalty, the honesty, just don't seem to hold the same weight for other people? It's not that you expect too much, it's that you live in a world where being genuine is rare, where people are so used to surface level interactions that real connection almost feels foreign to them. And when you refuse to play the game, when you refuse to be anything other than your authentic self, you start feeling like an outsider. It's frustrating, isn't it? You care deeply, you invest in people, you show up with a pure heart, and yet somehow it feels like you're the one struggling to find real, meaningful relationships. Because the truth is, we live in a world that rewards self-interest, a world where being ruthless is seen as strength, where people are more focused on what they can get than what they can give. And when you don't operate that way, when you actually listen, when you actually care, when you actually give a damn, it can feel like you're out of place, like you don't belong. So what do? You try to adapt. You try to fit in. You try to be less sensitive, less caring, less available, because maybe, just maybe, that will make things easier. But let's be real, that's not who you are. And pretending to be something you're not just to feel accepted, that's not the answer. Because the truth is, you're not the problem. It's not that you're too much. It's that the world around you is used to too little. See, there's nothing wrong with being different. There's nothing wrong with wanting more than shallow conversations and transactional relationships. There's nothing wrong with holding yourself to a higher standard, expecting depth, honesty, and loyalty. But when you live that way, you have to accept that not everyone will understand you. Not everyone will meet you where you are. And that's okay. Because the ones who do, those are the people worth keeping. Those are the connections worth waiting for. Because at the end of the day, real recognizes real. And if you have to shrink yourself, quiet yourself, or change yourself just to be accepted, then you're in the wrong room. You've probably heard it before, the idea that sometimes being alone isn't the worst thing that could happen to you. In fact, sometimes it's exactly what you need. It might sound strange at first, right? After all, no one wants to feel alone. We all crave connection, love, and companionship. But here's the thing. Sometimes you have to go through periods of solitude to find your true strength, to learn who you really are beneath all the noise. The reality is, when you're constantly giving to others, constantly being there for everyone else, it can be easy to lose sight of who you are. Your energy gets drained, your time gets consumed, and before you know it, you're left with little to no space for yourself. You start living for others, trying to meet their expectations, trying to be the person they want you to be. And in the process, you lose the connection to the most important person in your life, you. So what happens when you choose to step back? What happens when you start focusing on yourself, when you create space in your life for your own growth, for your own happiness? You start discovering parts of you that have been buried for too long. You start realizing how strong you really are, how capable, how worthy of love and respect, not because you're giving it all away, but because you've learned how to give it to yourself first. And here's the beauty of it all. You don't need a crowd to find yourself. You don't need to be constantly surrounded by people to feel validated or loved. When you learn to enjoy your own company, when you embrace your solitude, you become whole. And in that wholeness, you attract the right people. You attract those who see you for who you really are. Because when you stop overgiving and start filling your own cup, the energy you radiate changes. It's no longer desperate or needy, it's confident, it's grounded, and that's magnetic. But there's one more thing. When you embrace the strength of solitude, when you learn to stand tall, even when you're standing alone, you stop settling for relationships that drain you, you stop tolerating people who only take from you, you stop accepting anything less than what you truly deserve, and that's when you start attracting those who will give back. Those who will appreciate your kindness without taking it for granted. Those who will value you for everything you are, not just for what you do for them. The best relationships aren't built on dependence. They're built on mutual respect, mutual care, and mutual growth. And when you learn to stand alone, when you learn to nurture yourself, you build the foundation for the relationships that will truly enrich your life. Because sometimes being alone isn't about isolation, It's about creating space for the right people to come into your life.